Hey guys, how are you? Cam here from Language Nation. So welcome to the channel. If you didn't subscribe, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss on valuable information that will help you grow your business or as a newbie enter the industry, understand what you're doing and make money. While doing interpretation, while traveling, doing whatever else you're doing, or become a full-time interpreter. So today I'm going to be talking about what is the difference between interpretation and translation, and how many forms of interpretation are there, and what will be you, or what you will be doing as an interpreter. So the first thing first, what is the difference between interpretation and translation? First, translation is dealing with a certain, the written form of interpretation or translation. So basically you have a transcript, usually from a source language, which is like, for instance, it can be English, and you translating into French. So you have the material, the transcript in your hand. It can be a book, a report, a book, I don't know. It can be any form of a written document that you are translating to another language. So this deal with the written form of the language. So your skills, your written skills, your grammar skills should be at the highest level, because you don't have the person in front of you for you to ask for clarification or explanation. You only have the transcript in front of you. So that's translation. And there is many forms of translation, but we're not here for translation. I am an interpreter. I'm talking about interpretation. So what is interpretation? Interpretation is the oral form of translation. In other words, you receive a message from the emitter and you translate that message to a receiver. The emitter is the source language. It's giving you a language from which the message wants to be translated to a target language. The person who's receiving that interpretation is called the receiver. So emitter, receiver. That's the first thing you need to know. So that's interpretation. Now, there is 3 or 4 forms of interpretation, but you're probably going to be dealing only with 2 forms of interpretation. So what are the 4? You have conference interpretation, you have on-site interpretation, then you have consecutive and simultaneous interpretation. You're probably going to be dealing with the last 2. So what is consecutive interpretation? Consecutive interpretation is when the emitter give you a language from the source language, give you a message, and waits for you to transmit that message, to translate, interpret that message to the receiver. So he will say something and then waits for you to interpret that language to the receiver. And then back forth, the receiver will give you some feedback, and you will interpret that to the emitter, to the source language. So is that vice versa, back and forth between the receiver and emitter. So that's consecutive. Each one of them waiting for you to interpret before the other person answer. So that's consecutive interpretation. It can be in any form. It can be in legal form. It can be in medical form. In medical setting or a legal setting, business setting. It can be in different setting. And that's one of the most cases that you will be doing. Then the requirement is probably around 45 words a minute. You will learn this. I will teach you how to do this. So it's going faster, and your ability to memorize information is very important. And so the receiver will tell you something, you understanding it, memorize what he's saying, and then think about how to transmit that to the receiver in another language. So your capacity of memorization, your ability to memorize information and understand it in a quick situation is valuable. Then you will interpret that to the response. So simultaneous interpretation, which is the other form of interpretation. Simultaneous is when the source, the emitter, the source information that is coming to you, the raw information that is coming to you from the source is just coming to you without them waiting for you to interpret it. They don't give you time to interpret it. So they just talk. As they talk, you are directly interpreting to the receiver. So this requires a high form of skill set. This is a skill set that you have to learn. You have to practice a lot for you to get to that level. And it depends also the speed. If you are in a court setting, the speed is usually around 60 words per minute, 60 words per minute. Yes, it's very challenging. And imagine if you're not familiar with that industry or the information. So that's why, as an interpreter, you need to educate yourself.